So if you think you might be dealing with some leaky gut issues or intestinal permeability problems, in this video I want to help you understand how this can come about and the trouble that it can cause. And I also want to give you 4 steps that you can take to improve your situation. And step number 4, I'm going to share a study that's showing that this step seems to be really helping some people turn this situation around. You don't want to miss this.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So I want to explain leaky gut to you, but I also want it to make sense. So I'm going to try and talk to you like a human would talk to another human, because if it makes sense to you, it can make it a lot easier to do the work so that you can correct the underlying cause of a health issue. So when we're looking at leaky gut, we need to look at the intestinal tract. And the small intestine is about 22 feet long for most people. And when you look at the absorbable surface area of the inside lining of that small intestine, if you spread it all out, it could cover a tennis court. So this is a really big system in the body that has to be working correctly for you to be able to work your body correctly. So when we're looking at the inside lining of the intestinal tract, basically we have these really tight junctions here that it's kind of like having a bouncer named Mitch. And Mitch keeps all the bad guys out. We don't want all these food particles and the bacteria and the virus coming through these junctions, because right below that is the blood. That's our blood, and our immune system is in there as part of that. All those cells in that bloodstream is part of our immune system response. So when these junctions are tight, then really the only thing that gets through are the nutrients that are supposed to get through and come into the bloodstream so that we can be a human. So what happens is when there's inflammation due to a wide variety of issues that can create this, but this inflammation or some of these other problems seem to have the ability to widen these junctions. And when these junctions are wider, now all the wrong stuff is coming in. Where's your bouncer? Mitch is over by the pool tables talking to some cute girl, and he's not keeping all the bad guys out. So when these junctions are too wide, now we're getting these things like bacteria and virus and food particles, and even food that has not been digested correctly is coming in and coming into the bloodstream. So when any of these things come into the bloodstream, the body's like, I don't know what that is. That's not familiar to me. That's not something I normally see come in. So that must be an invader. So I'm going to set up the immune system to attack this invader. And then every time it shows up, my files say, oh, that's an invader. Let's go ahead and attack that, and we wipe out that problem. So when we look at the associations for this issue with leaky gut, we see a lot of autoimmune issues seem to be associated with leaky gut. We see liver issues like non-alcoholic fatty liver issues. We see a lot of blood sugar regulation issues like PCOS and diabetes, and then food allergies and food hypersensitivities. And I'm going to put a link in the description below this video to a study that showed us that when people are dealing with these issues, they seem to have a 25 to 87% chance to also be dealing with leaky gut. And we don't really know, is the leaky gut creating these issues, or are these issues creating the leaky gut? But they seem to go hand in hand, and 25 to 80% is quite astonishing. That can be a significant number. And we see a lot of contributing factors like dysbiosis, maybe some kind of small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or some type of bacterial overgrowth in the stomach, and basically where this gut flora is not so great. There's a lot of bad guys, not so many good guys when we're looking at this dysbiosis. Stress is very common, inflammation, poor diet, people eating Cracker Jacks nonstop, any type of GI conditions like the IBS and chronic gastrointestinal issues like constipation, all these digestive issues that people seem to deal with, and especially these yeast, mold, and fungal issues. I'm going to put a link in the description below for a study that showed us that when people were dealing with a candida issue, that when they corrected that candida issue, this leaky gut issue seemed to improve. And I've talked to some other experts that really feel like it's these type of organisms, the yeast, mold, and fungal type organisms, that seem to be most problematic at creating these wider junctions. And some people feel like, they're boring holes right through there, or they just create the type of inflammation that causes problems for these junctions. But a lot of people agree that this can be a big problem and worth looking at when we're looking at leaky gut. Which brings us to step one, which is to reduce any infections that may be creating this inflammation or creating these troubles. When we're looking at this, like Harvard study that I linked below that's talking about the candida, and we see them improving those issues and then seeing this leaky gut improve, well, that becomes a reasonable step for people to take when they're interested in improving this leaky gut problem. So the next thing we need to look at are any digestive malfunctions. So if a person's having any digestive symptoms like burping or bloating or acid reflux or constipation or diarrhea or nausea or indigestion, maybe food just kind of feels like it sits there like a rock in their stomach for 6 hours, or even skin or acne issues, all of these are signs that the digestive system is not working correctly. And why that matters for leaky gut is because we really need this stomach acid function working, because when the food comes in, the stomach should make enough acid to acidify that food and start that breakdown process. We need to have that HCl production there, and it's very common for someone not to have enough stomach acid to really acidify their food correctly. And this becomes another problem because if you don't have any acid, then all this bacteria and other varmints that are coming in on the food that we're eating, and it's coming in on the food that we're eating, when they come in, they're supposed to die in an acid bath. But if someone is not making enough stomach acid, they come in like, well, this is nice, let's set up camp here, and we end up with a bacterial overgrowth. And this can become problematic because a lot of these bacteria, like H. pylori and some of these other bacteria, can have waste that is alkaline. So that alkaline waste has the ability to further alkalize the stomach and reduce your ability to acidify your food so you can break it down and get the nutrients out of that food. But it also makes this stomach more of an alkaline environment to invite more of the varmints in. Everybody comes in, whatever wants to come in is welcome here. They come right in, they move right through this place where they're supposed to fry in an acid bath, and they can come down and set up camp in the small intestine and create all kinds of trouble. So we don't want that alkaline waste there, creating an environment that makes it easy for other bad guys to come in. Now the other part of the digestive process is once this food is acidified, it comes down here into the duodenum, and that acidic product entering the duodenum triggers the gallbladder to squirt this alkaline bile down. And bile is this soapy substance that it helps us digest our dietary fats so that we can access fat-soluble vitamins like A, E, D, and K. Those are kind of important things. But this alkaline bile also comes down and neutralizes the acids leaving the stomach. So this is important because there's a lot of bacteria and type of organisms that don't do so great with this acid, and that acid fries them and they die. But some other microorganisms do okay with the acid. But it's this alkaline stuff that ruins their day. So a lot of people feel like as long as this stomach is making enough acid to fry most of these varmints, and then when this acid product comes down here, this alkaline bile comes down to neutralize that and wipe out any of the varmints that maybe have a good time in that acid environment, well, now you've wiped them all out. You did both of the functions that left nobody alive, and now you just bring in good stuff with the food that you're eating. So we really want both of these functions working correctly. And the other thing is that when this acidic product comes down here and meets the alkaline bile, you're going to have an acid product meeting an alkaline product. When they collide, those opposite pHs create like this sizzle that really help us bust all the food apart down into those elemental nutrients that the body needs. And also, this sizzle might be what's wiping out a lot of these bad guys that are coming in. So we really want both functions. And a lot of people have their bile too thick and sticky to flow correctly, so it can't come down here and do all those jobs. So we really need to make sure that bile is flowing correctly if we're going to try to correct a leaky gut issue. So we'll put a link in the description below for our video on 10 signs of poor bile flow, and that'll go through things like, oh, my stool looks lighter than the color of cardboard, or maybe I have trouble digesting fats. Some signs like that that you can look at to figure out, is this bile flow a problem for me? Because you can take these other steps that we're going to talk about in this video to improve a leaky gut, but if you don't shut the front door, then more bad guys are going to come in and it's going to start the cycle all over again. So we really want that barrier there of that acid production to keep them from coming in. So people that are having low stomach acid issues can fix this issue by either supplementing with betaine HCl or maybe a little bit of apple cider vinegar. Apple cider vinegar can help if a person just needs a little bit of a boost, but most people need to supplement with HCl to really restore that acid function so that it can work correctly and restore that acidic environment so we're not leaving the front door open. And this is really problematic because it's this acidic product meeting the alkaline bile that really helps us break the food down into vitamins and minerals and amino acids and the dietary fats that we can utilize. And when they're not broken down properly, then those foods still have an identity. So if you're having a leaky gut issue here where things are coming through and you're not breaking down your food, well then these food particles still say, hi, I'm a chicken sandwich. I'm gonna come on in here, because they're not broken down into the elemental nutrients. The body wants to see vitamins and minerals and amino acids come into this bloodstream. It doesn't want to see a chicken sandwich. It doesn't know what a chicken sandwich is, and that becomes an invader. And now every time you eat a chicken sandwich, your body is going to war against a chicken sandwich. It's activating this immune system that creates all this inflammation. That's the response, is that inflammation. It's responding to an invader. So this is how a lot of people create these food sensitivity issues that were not there when they were born. That's different than a food allergy that could always be there. A lot of these food sensitivities are created because the food still has an identity and it gets into the bloodstream and creates all kinds of havoc. So we really want to improve the ability to break down the food into the elemental nutrients, and we want to tighten up those junctions so that anything left over is not going to come in and be where it really should not be. So if these are problems, we want to restore this acid function and we want to improve that bile flow so that we're really breaking the food down into elemental nutrients. So step number 3, this step was to remove the problematic foods. Because while you're working on improving all these issues, that's not going to happen by Thursday. This is going to take some time to restore digestion and improve these junctions and such. But we can remove the foods that seem to be most commonly problematic. Things like gluten and eggs and dairy and soy and nuts and seeds. And some other people might have problems with like nightshades and some other things like this. But these seem to be the most common problematic foods. So if you can remove these foods, it will remove a lot of that reaction from the immune system, a lot of the inflammation that can come from the immune system saying it's time to go to war against whatever this soy-based thing is. And that removes that reaction and that symptom that you could have. So we're not really correcting the problem, but we can really increase symptom relief by removing all these foods. And I mean all of these foods, like not even a bite. And if you can do that, sometimes a person can feel a whole lot better while they're taking steps to improve the other issues. So step number 4 can really be a big one, and it's probiotics. And I'm going to put a link in the description below to a study. It was kind of like a meta-analysis of 26 different controlled trials that was over 1,800 patients in all of these trials. And what they found was that when people were dealing with these issues like we had talked about and they were showing signs of leaky gut, when they used these probiotics, they really improved their scenario. And they were testing this by looking at, okay, let's look at the things that are coming into the bloodstream that probably should not be, and let's look at the body's reaction to those things. We're going to measure both of those things, and then we're going to use probiotics for an extended period of time and measure those things again. And the improvements were quite astonishing. And keep in mind that this was over 26 different trials. And it wasn't like they were like, we're going to do a study on this brand of probiotics. It wasn't like that. All these studies were using different things and they were still seeing significant improvement. So that's something to really pay attention to. Now, the type of probiotics that were used in these studies really varied. Some of them were just using soil-based probiotics, and a lot of them were using combination probiotics where the formula included some lactobacillus and bifidobacterium type forms of the probiotic bacteria. So a lot of them included this lactobacillus paracasea, and a lot of them included this bifidobacterium breve, and this Bifidobacterium longum. And you don't need to understand how to pronounce those. I probably didn't even pronounce them correctly. But these were just common probiotics that were used in these studies. So if you can find a formula that includes some of these or use these soil-based organisms, then all of a sudden you're using the same tools that were shown in these studies to really bring about great results. But most of the studies did seem to use a mixture of the probiotics. So you want to find a formula that has a mixture, and if you can find one that has these three, then that's great. And I'll put a link in the description below to the probiotic formula that we use that contains all three of these. And that doesn't mean I'm telling you to use that formula, and I'm not saying that that formula will fix leaky gut. It's just an example of a formula that is similar to what was used in a lot of these trials. And one thing that was interesting in a lot of these trials, that the amount that they used was 1 to 10 billion, and that's less than what I would normally suggest somebody use. And a lot of the probiotics that you find out there have a much higher dose than that when you just look at the label. So it seems that it wasn't about needing more to get the really good results, but they were also using these for 2 to 3 months. And that's actually longer than I usually tell people to use probiotics. I usually tell people, oh, just do it for 3 or 4 weeks, and if those digestive malfunctions are working correctly and the environment is right, then they'll just kind of set up camp and thrive. But it appears with these studies that they showed that they were doing it longer than that, and maybe that's the right thing to do. I also want to touch on something that I'm not so sure about, some questionable steps. Glutamine is very popular to use for leaky gut, and glutamine is an amino acid, and the body uses amino acids to rebuild structures that need to be rebuilt and repaired. But we need to understand why this could be beneficial. So when we look at the body at the cellular level, there's a natural circadian rhythm that happens, and during the day the body should be in this catabolic state where it's very good at creating energy and keeping us going all day. But it's also good at breaking down tissues so that they can be renewed and we can get rid of this metabolic waste. And then at night, the body should move into this anabolic state where it's very good at sleeping and resting, but also repairing and rebuilding. So both of these states are appropriate. We like both of those things to happen. But a lot of people, for a wide variety of reasons, will get stuck in one of these states and they won't move back and forth like they should. And being stuck in either of these states can create a wide variety of health issues. We see a lot of chronic constipation when someone's stuck in this overly anabolic state, because in this state, the body tends to send more water to the kidneys and less to the bowels, and that can dry up the stool and create a constipation issue. So this is important when we're looking at leaky gut, because if someone is stuck in this anabolic state, well, glutamine appears to be a very pro-anabolic amino acid. So the reason that it seems to be helpful, because it's supplying that amino acids that the body can use as building blocks, but it also takes a person that might be stuck in this catabolic state and pushes them into this repair and rebuild state. So it's helping them not only give them the tools to rebuild that structure and that lining, but it's pushing them into the state where the body is very good at repairing things. So that's why it could be beneficial for some people. But if somebody's really stuck in this state, they're going to take glutamine and they're not going to poop until Christmas. It's really going to magnify this problem of sending too much water to the kidneys and maybe create other health symptoms for them. So I don't like to see people using a lot of glutamine just to fix leaky gut unless they know where their body chemistry is and understand if they're creating a problem by using a supplement that's going to push them more anabolic. So if you want to understand how to look at that, my book, Kick Your Fat in the Nuts, kind of walks you through running simple self-tests at home that'll give you an idea, am I leaning too far in one direction or the other? Am I way over here and maybe glutamine will be helpful? Or am I stuck here and I shouldn't really use a whole lot of glutamine? And the book is available on Amazon, but I'll put a link in the description below where you can get the whole thing totally for free, and that'll kind of walk you through that process. So I just don't like to see people use a whole lot of glutamine, and in those studies they were shown with the probiotics, they didn't use any glutamine. And when we look at these steps, step one is to reduce any infections, and I feel like that's important, but when you look at the studies, none of those studies, they weren't using anything to wipe out any type of infection before they started the probiotics. The problem with the probiotics is that if someone has a major overgrowth going on in their digestive tract and it's down here in the small intestine, then when we put these probiotics in there, then it's almost like they go to war. They're going to fight all these bad guys when you put the good guys in there, and that war can create an exacerbation of the symptoms that the person's dealing with. So they're like, I feel awful now, I'm not going to use those. Those obviously were not right for me. But they really just needed to take this down a notch, the infection down a notch, so when they put the probiotics in there, it wasn't such a war type response when there's battle going on. So we like to see people take that step one and really reduce any type of overgrowth before they get to the probiotics. But from those studies, maybe not everybody really needs to do that. Step number two, we want to restore any of those digestive functions so that we're closing the front door so that we don't work to rebuild all this and then just bring more bad guys in to start it all over again. Step number three is we remove those foods to help us just at least feel better while we're working on improving these situations. And then step number four is the probiotics. So that's it. It seems like this situation can take a little bit more time. You're not going to fix it all by Thursday. And if you understand that, then that's okay. So right now, if you want to learn more about that bile flow issue and figure out if that's an issue for you, you can jump over and check out our video on 10 signs of poor bile flow to see if that may be a problem. But let us know in the comments if you have success with this or if you've done other things to improve your leaky gut. I can't wait to hear about your results.